Hey, everybody. More sadness today. We have yet another mass shooting in California, this one in Half Moon Bay, where, as of now, reportedly 7 people lost their lives to another gunman. This one in California, this one in Half Moon Bay, where, as of now, reportedly 7 people lost their lives to another gunman. This one has the name of, forgive my pronunciation if it happens to be a little off. But the name of this person is is Zhao Chunli. Zhao Chunli, and 67 years old. That's all that I know, other than the name. And according to Twitter and what's reported, which comes up here, as you can see. All right, we've got a under Half Moon Bay. We have California Governor Gavin Newsom stating at the hospital meeting with victims, let's zoom in on what he wrote here, of a mass shooting when I get pulled away to be briefed about another shooting, this time at Half Moon Bay. Tragedy upon tragedy, tragedy upon tragedy. And my other friend, I know both of them, Representative Eric Swalwell, California, tweets rather, yet again, our community is faced with another mass shooting, this time cutting 7 lives short in Half Moon Bay. I'm keeping the victims and their families in my thoughts, but we are far beyond, quote, thoughts and prayers. We need gun safety reforms now. And this was in San Mateo. Senator Dianne Feinstein adds on Twitter, as we grieve one mass shooting in California, it's devastating to see another at Half Moon Bay. My thoughts are with the victims and their families. We can't keep turning a blind eye to the gun violence plaguing our communities. We must act. And Lisa Bloom tweets, we interrupt the news about the Monterey Park mass shooting to cover the Half Moon Bay mass shooting because we have lost our blanking minds. The Second Amendment, like slavery and subjugation of women, was one of our founders' worst 18th century ideas. Repeal it. Second Amendment, of course, is the right to bear arms. Enrique Lee says this is dramatic video showing Zhao Chunli being arrested after shooting deaths that he caused. And this is Betty Yu from KPIX. And then this is, wow, another one. This is a suspect is now in custody. Apparently, they just took him down. That's ABC. That's Chunli's. And I have to point out, this is the second mass shooting in 3 days committed by an older Asian man. Okay, the second. All right. What does that say? I don't think it says what you think what you think I'm saying it says. All right. I'll get to that. Christina says, breaking, at least 7 people, you know that. I'm so heartbroken, we cannot grieve lives lost. All right. Senator Alex Padilla says, after spending the day grieving with community members in Monterey Park, I'm horrified to learn of another mass shooting in Half Moon Bay. Our outrage at this deadly cycle of violence must be a call to action. And here's what I think is going on. Because there was also a mass shooting in, I believe it was also on the West Coast, but not California. African-American man did it. And increasingly, these violent acts are happening at a frighteningly rapid rate. According to a statistic I drew from a chart by a gun violence or anti-gun violence organization, there were, just by my count, physical count, 207 mass shootings. And get this, the last 72 hours, okay? Yeah, again, that is 207 mass shootings in 72 hours, okay? Right here. 207 mass shootings over the last 72 hours, folks. That amounts to a frightening statistic. That comes to 2.875 mass shootings every hour, or round it to 3. That rounds to 3. That rounds to 3 mass shootings every hour somewhere in the United States. Okay? Now, is that a record? That's a lot. All right? I mean, I could deal with 0 mass shootings. In fact, ideally, you'd want to say, okay, I can see maybe we get 1 a month, or maybe, okay, unfortunately, 10 a month or something like that. You prefer 0. But 3 mass shootings every hour. Every hour. Now, when I talk about this, some people go into their corners. They say, well, we need gun control. I don't disagree with that. But I do think of a woman I was interviewing way back when I was my Clarion columnist, who had some very sound reasons why gun control wasn't working, but it basically added up to the current laws were not being enforced. So that's one thing, okay? But what I go to, since when I interviewed her was 1994, and think about it, 1994, 2004, 2014, all right? 28 years, actually, 29 years ago. That was 29 years ago when I interviewed that young woman for my Clarion column in this Clarion, the Oakland Hills newspaper of the time. All right. 29 years ago. Here's what I believe is going on. My question is, what would cause a person to consider gun violence as the option to do anything, to solve any problem, to take action? Why? And the reason why I look at that is because we're past the point, or we should be past the point, of trying to pin gun violence on a certain type. With the statistics lately, you can't say it's typically a white male or white teenager or anything that attaches to a person's breed. And I say breed because the reality is we're different breeds of people. We're one race, the human race. Yeah, just like dogs and other animals, we're different breeds. Okay? We're not different races. One race, different breeds. So I think we're past the idea that there are certain breeds, all right? And we should be, okay? We shouldn't have been there to begin with. But some people have used this situation to advance their own dastardly concerns. Now, there are 2 professors that, in their view, found what creates a mass shooting. And in Politico, they remarked that, or they were quoted as remarking, they didn't say this on video, but the names of these professors: Gillian Peterson, associate professor of criminology at Hamline University, and James Dinsley, a professor of criminology at Metro State University. And I'm sorry, but the author of this post that I'm reading, Marilyn Warner, didn't say the location of those universities also. I suppose you can look them up, but it's kind of nice when somebody makes it easy for you and puts them in their article, right? But I digress. All right. They decided to take a more meaningful approach. And what they found was that there's a correlation between mental illness and these actions, to a point where they argue they can be tracked. And there's certain people who can be put on sort of, a watch list. All right. They had a book that came out in 2021 called The Violence Project: How to Stop a Mass Shooting Epidemic. And they claim that it reveals, as quoted by Politico, a striking commonality among the perpetrators of mass shootings, and suggest a data-backed, mental health-based approach. And they say that what they find is that their research says that, let's say that The first problem is something called replacement theory. In other words, when there's one shooting of this type that occurs, and we've had 207 in 72 hours, there's desire for what's called copycatism. I call it copycatism. All right. And one, first of all, has to argue that the rate of mass shootings is so frequent that there's got to be copycats within that pattern. That's, again, 3 mass shootings every hour. Every hour. Okay. Every hour. But then they say there are these consistent pathways. Early childhood trauma seems to be the foundation. Violence in the home, sexual assault, parental suicides, extreme bullying. And then it builds outward toward hopelessness, they say, fear, desperation, isolation, self-loathing, and rejection from peers. All right. And they say it turns into a really identifiable crisis point. But I think it goes even deeper than that. And I go all the way back to a 1979 book written by MIT researchers Barry Bluestone and Bernard Harrison called The Deindustrialization of America. And The Deindustrialization of America was one of the books that launched the concept of industrial policy. That is, that the United States should have a sound, firm industrial policy to direct the growth of organizations and industries with respect to their impact on our very social fabric. That was the idea. And Bluestone and Harrison discovered that domestic violence went up at a frighteningly high rate in direct proportion to unemployment rate. In other words, the higher the unemployment rate, the higher the rate of domestic violence. But it went a step further than that. The higher the unemployment rate, the more likely they were to commit a crime. And Hooper's just quite right. The industrialization of America, destruction of the American middle class. That's correct. That's precisely what Bluestone and Harrison's book was about. Because it was at that point that America's economy started to be, from the perspective of its ability to provide a middle-class family of 4 with just that, an income to send kids to school, to have a house with a single earner, to have enough leisure time to read books and go to Disneyland and so on. Foreign competition in automobiles was the first strike against our standard American way of living. But what's happened since then? Think about it. If you have to do a service call for AT&T or for American Home Shield, you name the product, it's far more likely that you're going to wind up calling overseas and not the United States. And I would say, although I haven't researched this, but just from my personal experience, that's 80% of the time. What does that mean? That means that it's more likely that you're making a call that effectively sends your money out of the United States. That effectively means that somebody in the United States isn't able to work at home and have their own call center at home, thereby making their own money at home during the pandemic, which would have been a fantastic thing, right? Still would be, okay? So Hooper says it's not just unemployment, but underemployment as well. Yes. He says, I know that my dad's manufacturing job no longer exists. And even if it did exist, then it would pay less than 30% in today's dollars. Right. And see, that's exactly right. So the problem that we have is that people don't have enough money to live. And it's literally, if you combine that with social media and the way that now is of people being nasty to each other on social media, which they then in some cases carry into standard life, which produces this sort of dual conversation where you're at the table, but then also you have the phone. So you quite literally, you see something on the phone that upsets you, but the family at the table doesn't know what upsets you. The easiest thing to do is to put down the phone. But if you happen to work in such a way that you rely on your phones, it makes it that much harder to do. So there's that social media and technology aspect. So you have social media and technology, not enough dollars sloshing around. In economic development terms, we call it dollar turnover in communities. Our dollar turnover in communities is low. You would say, how do I know that? Simple. You can't spend every single day or several times a week making a phone call that happens to go overseas to a call center in the Philippines or in India or someplace else other than the United States, and then tell me those dollars are staying right here, because they are not. Okay. Jeremy says, Mr. Zinni, it's the purge. Yeah, but what does that mean? Okay. My point is this: I'm dealing with processes that are concrete and fixable, and also unconventional. Because all of my life, it's always been, you have a lot of guns or you don't. But no one ever talks, few ever talk about the need to get money in the pockets of people. And look at how we've been impacted during the pandemic. Think about it. It is a statistical fact. It is a data fact that during the pandemic, the 2 times that our gross domestic product increased was in direct correlation to government programs, PPP loan programs, the CARES Act programs that went into our pockets. It did a lot of good. They not only helped our incomes, they helped us pay for healthcare. They literally helped us keep a roof over our head. Hope adds a little system dynamics here, feedback loop. People lose hope. People rush to either alcohol or drugs, which may be providing instant relief, but almost makes the problem worse in the long run. Absolutely. Jeremy says, I agree with the money part, 100%. People who aren't homeless are less likely to commit crimes. Right. The old adage of people having money. And let's add in something that I'm just considering now. FOMO, the feeling of missing out, right? So you're watching television, like my mom watches television, we do, and she thinks that all the people at the Cowboy games have money and have a lot of money to spend. Maybe some of those folks just got those jobs just to have whatever job they're working, money to go to a Cowboys game, and that's it. And so they live their lives with that because, hey, there's so little other things going on. But their money is so tight that here's work with me here, because this is another video I'm going to do. They're spending money, I argue, to go to the games, to make videos of them fighting other people and picking fights. And they take those videos and they send them to the organization like TMZ, which pays thousands of dollars for those videos. They get that money and they dole it out to the other people who are at the Cowboys game with them, also starting those fights. Because the question is, why would Cowboys fans be fighting each other? And I thought the other question should be, why is it that these fights are caught on camera with such an alarming regularity? And then being in the video blog content creation field myself for a long time now, I figured out, hey, you know what? I know TMZ pays out money for these things. And I'm thinking, gosh, I'd love to have like a little cash drawer where I could do that, right? But not for those videos, okay? And that's what they're doing. And so the copycatism continues with that. More violence that they're making money from, all right? To the point where TMZ feels that they have to show that. And so the cycle continues, okay? So the violence cycle continues. But think about it. Why? They need money. If they didn't need the money, if the American middle class were truly intact, actions like that would be unnecessary and they would be banned. And TMZ couldn't make money by buying videos like that. It would be outlawed, right? Okay. All right. Hopper says what she would have done is to go to a 32-hour week, which would help with income distribution. I don't think that's it. I think that what we need to do is I think we need to subsidize, we need to have an industrial policy. First of all, we never really got there. We started thinking about industrial policy in reaction to the actions of the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MEAT, which I had the pleasure of visiting while I was a grad school at Cal in 1987. I was invited by MEAT to visit their offices. Okay. It was a heady experience and kind of a downer because I thought it was going to be this big palace thing and all these high-tech stuff, and it wasn't that at all. But the organization has had a fantastically powerful impact on our lives. Why? Because Japan then, and still arguably does still to this point today, but in with different impact, picked the automobile industry and the steel industry to target to help their companies compete better on the world stage. How? By subsidizing them so that they could produce products at below their production cost. That's how. We don't do that in America all the time. We do that with farmers. We help farmers, but we don't do it with tech. We don't do it with targeted industries. We say we want market forces. Listen to me. We want the market forces, the free market to do it. Well, here's where the foolishness comes in. Because there is no free market. The market is really controlled by other countries with functional policies that create organizations like the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. It's not just Japan, it's Korea, Indonesia. Think about Airbus Industries and the whole formation of the European Union. All of that, all of those were different expressions of focused national industrial policy. Where was the United States? Where is the United States? Answer, nowhere. Nowhere. Okay. Hopper says, what is even more scary is that so-called smart people are pretty stupid. I had a college student tell me that something was true because they found it on Google. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of that. He says, or it could be simple as the historic cycle coming to the United States, decline and fall of the Roman Empire. Given, I don't like that because it implies that there's nothing we can do about any of this. And I subscribe to the idea that if you can forecast your future, you can, to a degree, impact your future. Okay. Then he follows up with, but Japan is a monolithic society. I'm glad you fell into my trap. Of one race, breed, you mean, not race, breed, one breed, so that they have an advantage or disadvantage, as the case may be, allows easy targeting of an industry. I'm glad you brought that up because this question has been with me for decades, going all the way back to when I was in undergraduate school at the University of Texas at Arlington. And what I discovered then, which still holds true today, there are two industrialized countries in the entire world that are multi-ethnic: the United States and the United Kingdom. And that's it. That's it. When I say multi-ethnic, I mean where the populations are obviously such that you don't have the enormous predominance of one people, like enormous, like 80%. Okay. The United States and the UK. Maybe there's been a change since then, but I doubt it. So, what then is the answer? The answer is simple. If we view ourselves as one country of people, and we should take care of those people regardless of what they look like or how old they are, then guess what? Guess what? At least theoretically, our statistics toward gun violence will go down. If we give money to people who need it, if we make sure that economic development monies go where they're most needed, if we make sure that people are not pushed out of jobs, hear me, okay? then we have some success. All right. Hope it says the United States is a so-called free market economy with minimal targeting of industries. How old are you, by the way? The U.S. is still at the top of the heap with regards to high tech. The rest of the world is catching up. But catching Europe is significantly ahead. Reason why I focused on this one, okay, is you say minimal targeting of industries. But when I was around back then, and I was headed to grad school in 1985, and I was getting to know the people at BRE, the Berkeley Roundtable on the International Economy, which was Cowell's contribution to the industrial policy debate. All right. With John Zeisman and Steve Cohen. Steve Cohen was my thesis committee. And Stowe says you're 65. I'm 60. See? So it's a generational thing. So anyway, my point is, but this is good for people who are watching this who are younger to focus on. Industrial policy was the thing. The idea of targeting industries. But what's happened is that we have become, as ironically enough, as we become more mixed in our economic involvement, first Black president and so on, it has been harder for America to wrap its mind around effectively targeting industries. I'm not saying that's necessarily the reason, but there seems to be a correlation. The more diverse we become, the more people don't seem to want to target our industries to quite literally save ourselves. All right? We need industrial policy again. We need it at a granular level. We need cities to be re-incentivized to help small businesses. In Oakland, for example, we have a tremendous problem. We elect people who get there because they say they're progressive, whatever that means, or in the Southern parlance, conservative, whatever that means. Neither one has anything to do with actually running the government to make sure that people get money when they need it, resources when they need it. So what happens? During the pandemic, businesses are attacked by criminals who really are people just trying to get money to make ends meet because we did not build up businesses. We did not help them. We still don't. Okay? All right? Hopper says, in one sense, you do have an industrial policy. That is, no policy is a policy by default. Well, it's not that there is no policy. It's worse. We have policies that are not targeted with respect to getting money to businesses to help them. We have policies that are hodgepodge. Your argument would be that because of that nature, effectively there are no policy. I get that, okay? And I'll concede that. Point being that it makes the problem even deeper. All right? All right? It makes the problem even deeper. We need an industrial policy, folks. We need to have an industrial policy that crosses and also deals with thorny issues. Like, for example, there are people in Oakland who are saying, well, Zinni, you back the Oakland Boken oversized terminal. Yes, I do. But they'll say, no, you're coal. You love coal. Well, I don't love coal. But the Boken oversized terminal was originally designed to carry a number of different minerals. And it just so happens because of the market size and layout around the world that coal is the one that allows that Oakland Boken oversized terminal pencil out to pay for itself. Now, if Oakland government were thinking, here's where your industrial policy comes in, okay? It would say, hey, look, we don't want the coal to come through there. So what we'll do is we'll build the Boken oversized terminal where we'll pay you, developer, the difference between what you would get handling coal and not as an incentive to not handle coal. See? Then here's another problem. The reason why we have still the demand to build that thing is because worldwide, do you know what the highest priced commodity has been of late? Coal. Yeah, coal. And remember, the whole clean energy call all the policy seemingly alterations, everything else, okay? Everything else started when Thomas Steyer spent his many, many millions of dollars in trying to change and turn public policy toward clean energy. Where do you get those dollars from? He's a coal investor. It's a mineral in the ground. There are people who say keep it in the ground. But guess what, folks? Tell that to people in West Virginia. Tell that to people. I said this to former Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf on my show, my friend. And I said, hey, you know what, Libby, you have to stop trying to throw people out of jobs who are in the fossil fuel industry. I said, if we can put people on the moon and we can talk about sending them to Mars and planet, there's no reason why we cannot clean up the fossil fuel industry and maintain those jobs. But you see, now this is the war. We have people warring against each other, trying to, under this idea that if you throw them out of the jobs, it will be better. We're making them poorer. That is happening. And we're being asked to wait for electricity to sort of catch up to fossil fuels and power us effectively and not have brownouts and everything else. That's ridiculous. Where's the planning? Where's the technical thinking? Where's the desire to do a moonshot? All right? Then someone says, well, we got fusion. We don't have fusion. That's a long way off. We have things we can do right now, okay? So West Virginia is trying to reinvent its energy into windmills. That's not going well. He says people in coal mines know the next generation won't be working in the mines. That's fine. But here's the problem. I know that. I don't know that, because if you take a look at past forecasts, we were supposed to be out of coal by now. Coal is still in demand. So you don't know that. And my point is, rather than thinking about or wishing for a future, we need to deal with what is today. We need to stare our lives real and deal with them as it looks and say, what kind of technology can we develop to make this cleaner? Because you want to know what the real problem is one we haven't discussed. There are more people on this earth than there ever have been before. We haven't had a decline. What happens when you get more and more people in a hot room? It gets hotter. Okay? Hey, Rolling Dubs, how you doing? It gets hotter. All right? Harper says the plan is to have nuclear fusion a year X plus 30, with X being today. Yeah, I know that. We were supposed to be there. Yeah, we were supposed to be there by now. That's what I'm talking about. These forecasts, I don't buy. What I buy is the effective use of technology available right now. We're not calling for it. The government doesn't have any programs to call for innovation in traditional energy. If they do and they exist, they're not making noise about them, and the tax credits are not big or subsidies. You can't throw people out of jobs and then think it's okay. And that's why you have people who want the Oakland Vulcanized oversized terminal built and allowed to haul coal. It was designed to do so without producing emissions. You would say, how? Covered rail cars. Someone tried to argue, oh, they don't exist. They do exist. This is where you get into the liberal conservative thing, and in this case, it's the so-called progressives adding in their version of anti-intellectualism, which they don't want to admit as anti-intellectualism, like to tell you they know and you won't look it up. But when you look it up, you actually do the work, what you find out is this, that it's quite common to put together a special deal for cars. So let's say Phil Tagami was trying to do this. He wanted covered rail cars used. Covered rail cars are available, folks. You design your own system for hauling. That's the idea. Hey, regulation doesn't favor the use of covered rail cars? Mandate it. Right now, there's no mandate. The regulation doesn't say, the regulation doesn't make it costly to use them, right? So there should be a mandate, all right? Hey, Eric Schwartz, how you doing? Hey, Roland Dubs, how you doing? All right, there shouldn't be something that allows that use. My point is this. we need to stop yelling at each other. We need to have industrial policy that saves jobs, produces more jobs available, pays more money, keeps the jobs in the United States, all right, and doesn't throw people out of work. That's what we need, okay? Oh, Eric, I'm sorry to hear that you're sick. Yeah. Hey, turmeric. I don't know. Wow, I don't know what's wrong with you, man. So those are the things that we need to do. Let me put it this way. We need an industrial policy. We're just arriving. We need an industrial policy to curb gun violence, because it is our lack of an industrial policy and our constant disinvestment out of this United States, not helping small businesses, not getting money to people. Look, even during the pandemic, telling all these folks you're going to shut their businesses down. But as I told Governor Newsom, hey, you got to pay them. They didn't do that initially. And now there's legislation that allows the cities in California to do just that, to build programs, to do that. But the cities don't have the brain power. And I say that by the fact that they don't do it, their actions, right? To actually form programs to do that. You can do that with Assembly Bill 464 Mullen. What does that do? It creates enhanced infrastructure financing districts that can then be used to get money to small businesses affected by the pandemic. Who's used it? I don't know. San Francisco looked like they're taking a stab at it. Has Oakland? No. Okay. Hope says we can't clone U.S. history. Humphrey Hawkins in 2023. I don't see it as a clone. I see it as a necessity. I see it as something we must do. I see it as something we have to do. All right. Folks, it is 10:35. I'll be back. I've got to work on my Oakland News Now Daily for today before today goes away. Live long and prosper in your world. Oh, he says, who was wanted guaranteed employment. I remember that. Didn't go anywhere. Well, actually, I'm glad you said that, because it was Nixon that actually came up with the idea, not so much for guaranteed employment, but for a guaranteed income. That was actually Nixon's idea. Check it out. All right, folks. Go Niners. I'll see you all later. Hey, by the way, Oscars in the morning. Come back 8:30. We'll have the Oscar nominations. That ends this broadcast.